not the prosecution, the defense exposed the shit out of Cassie. They exposed her to be a drug addict that Diddy was trying to beg to get help. Diddy pretty much, she also admits that she knew Diddy was a drug addict, which that's a very integral part of this idea that if Diddy was sex trafficking and running this corrupt organization as alleged in RICO, if the nigga was a drug addict and the chick was a drug addict, these are just two freaky drug fiends. Maybe that's not a RICO. Maybe that's not something that's deliberate. These were people, they were high as hell, freaky as hell, and in a toxic relationship. So that was kind of brought to light today. Also, we get some horrifying details, which I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if Cassie was trying not to answer these things going into, testifying. And by the way, I think she always knew that these details may or may not come out. And these details include her even admitting that she FaceTimed her now husband while Diddy was deep in her guts. Things of that sort. Basically, she admitted today. And by the way, I'm giving you out a preview of what because we're going to get in all the details. She admitted that while she was dating her now husband, she was still doing freak-offs. By the way, at least in the early stages. By the way, she also admitted that when she was dating Kid Cudi, she was still doing freak-offs. Basically, the defense did an amazing job of proving Cassie is just freaky as shit. So this idea that Cassie were forced to do freak-offs when she was in a relationship with Diddy or when she was around. No. Even when she left, she was doubling back. This chick was just freaky. So people think that today was a tremendous victory for the defense. By the way, Cassie was dismissed from the stand. It was finished. And Dawn Richards was also introduced as a witness. So we're going to kind of go through the whole thing. Again, I'm sorry if you guys wanted it in real time, but at least when we go through it now, we don't have to do the let's wait for another tweet. We could go straight through it, okay? So, everybody good? Everybody good? Shout out to everybody on the King Akademiks channel. By the way, tell me if my voice is going. Damn, somebody's a happy 40th. I'm turning 29. What are y'all talking about? Chat, I'm turning 29 at midnight. Fruity Pebbles, thank you for becoming a member. Captain Dex, who just gifted some subs? Okay, so we're gonna move at a breakneck speed. Pause. And here we go. So we're going to kind of like recap the day. We're going to kind of do the same things we did, but we're going to be able to do it much quicker and have much more understanding because all the tweets are already there. So here we go. And we could get into it immediately, right? So the judge said initially that the defense cross-examination could go today until 4:30 today. And then they'll limit. So the judge is putting some time constraints on this. Obviously, if you leave it up to the defense, they're going to want to talk to Cassie for a week and a half, right? Because this is the main witness, and they want to drag her. Even if it's certain things that might be proven the same point, they want to keep hammering that home that the jury could be like, oh, okay, Cassie's just fucking freaky, right? All right, so the judge said, yo, you guys could only cross-examine till 4:30 today, and then she was going to give a 30-minute, or that's Submarinian, he's going to give a 30 minutes of redirect, and that was going to be, obviously, the AUSA. Combs' lawyer, Anna Maria Estavo, says we have some evidentiary issues. The judge says, tell me about them. They should have been in writing. They said, we don't understand why they're taking time to object to our exhibits. AUSA Johnson says they're proposing to use a video of Combs walking in nature, talking about God. It is improper and invited jury nullification. Judge says, let's hear it. By the way, no one's in the court yet. There's no jury. There's no Cassie. Combs Estavo says, so Combs' lawyer Estavo says, and I guess this is a video that Diddy was like speaking about God. I think TMZ actually put the video out. Let me see if we can find it. I think this is a video right here. Da-da-da. By the way, also, we did get a revelation that Cassie got another $10 million, but she got it from the Intercontinental. So it looked like she was about to sue the Intercontinental for leaking that video, right? And, obviously she would be a victim of domestic assault, and leaking that video severely damages her reputation, and they gave her $10 million. So Cassie's been collecting the bag. That's $30 million. So she got her 30 no matter what. Cassie really the 30 for 30. You get what I'm saying? Hold on. Let me see. Where we go? There's something where he's like walking in nature. Let me see if I can find that video. Hold on. Let me see. Okay. I don't know if we can find that video, but we want to keep the speed up. So let's just keep going through, all right? So it's a video of him talking about God. I don't know why it's kind of relevant, but I guess they want to bring it up. The judge says, our juror's ready. Oh, by the way, they says this was about him being in rehab, which Miss Ventura didn't remember. So we want to refresh her recollection with this. Okay, so it's about a video of him being in rehab. Diddy rehab. Let's see. Diddy rehab. Okay. Okay, I thought I seen the video. Never mind. If anyone, it was on TMZ. If you guys see it, let me scroll down a bit. If you guys see it, just please let me know, because apparently the full video is out there. And I think it's just a video of him kind of like walking around and whatever. Let's see. Is it here? Yo, this Alex Fine nigga he is getting cooked, bro. That nigga is getting cooked right now. Okay, I can't find the video. Screw it. Just send me a link if anyone knows where it's at, right? So apparently Diddy went to rehab, and there's a video of him in rehab talking about God and all that type of stuff. AUSA Johnson says it can't be played for her in front of the jury. Estavo says we have headphones. The judge says our jury's ready. Any more issues? Estavo says if the rape is after the charged conduct, it shouldn't have come in. It's a huge issue. Okay? It's a huge issue for us. The judge says it's not a huge issue. You didn't raise it at the time. Combs says we thought we could cross on it. Now that's kind of interesting. So it looks like Diddy's lawyers are coming back in post to say the charged conduct that is alleged in the indictment, the rape happens after that time span that y'all claim that she was trafficked. We don't think that should have been brought up. And I don't think actual sexual assault is there. I think sexual assault is one of the predicate offenses for it's one of the predicate offenses for the RICO Act in Diddy's case, but it's not actually charged. So he's not really charged with rape, right? But is it one of the things that's charged under the RICO? Yes, it is, right? Which I hope you understand that little nuance. If a RICO Act, you could put mad different things, murder, this and third. Again, the predicate offenses doesn't necessarily have to be in a different thing. I hope that made sense, because sometimes I'm talking, I'm like, yeah, I don't even get what I just said. Under RICO, he's charged with RICO sex trafficking. I got to bring up the latest indictment. Let me bring it up, make this a little bit easier for y'all. I'll try to bring up the indictment. Diddy indictment. Here we go. But I don't think this is the latest indictment. Here we go. Hold on. Nah, I'm not even going to pull it up. It's a waste of time. Anyway. Okay. So, it's interesting. It looks like they realized they should have made a fuss about having Cassie testify about this rape, right? They didn't do it, But now they're saying, oh, well, we got to address it in cross and we need to bring some other things into it because we shouldn't allow y'all to do it. The judge is kind of saying, y'all should have brought this up yesterday or objected to it yesterday. Looked like they didn't. Okay. All right. So the judge says not a huge issue. He didn't raise it at the time. And it says we thought we could do it on cross. And now they're starting. So all rise. Good morning. You're still under oath, Ms. Ventura. And it says you believe Mr. Combs. So now this is Estavo, Diddy's lawyer, questioning her. Do you believe Mr. Combs was blackout for the Intercontinental event? Cassie says, I believe he was intoxicated. Everyone's definition is different. Estavo says, but you said blackout. She then says, what do you write here? She says, I wrote, when you get fucked up the wrong way. Did you mean drugs? That's what Estavo asked. She says, and alcohol. Estavo then says, here Mr. Combs write to you, I'm so horny for you. AUSA Johnson says, this ain't an evidence. Again, they keep objecting to these exhibits of text messages that basically, I think it's the 400 that were introduced the day before. Estavo says, here Mr. Combs is asking you for sex soon after the Intercontinental, right? You know what I realized? Chat, you know what I realized? We got to take a step back. I'm sorry. We got to take a step back. We got to take a step back. Because we're missing a huge piece of this. We're missing a huge piece of this. If you're only watching me to cover this, that means we've missed a few things because we didn't cover the afternoon session yesterday. So if we just start today, we miss half of a day of testimony from Cassie. So we got to get that update and then flush that out, then continue it today. So sorry. Here we go. Yeah, this was the day. Here we go.
Attention, Team Diddy defense. You are losing to Cassie.
Okay, and by the way, I think people all consider today a big win for Diddy, but we're getting an update from yesterday afternoon. Remember, I had to cut the stream to go do the event.
She is beating you. It's not even close. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what the style is. I don't know what the approach is.
He kind of gives a little bit more ad-lib version, so just because we didn't read the tweets, let's try to figure out some type of neutral way to kind of see the update from yesterday. Let's go Law and Crimes. Yeah, Law and Crimes, they're pretty much by the book type of shit, you know what I mean? Let's see. Okay. Give me 1 second. Not 5 hours ago. Okay, here we go. The defense claps back at Cassie. Here we go.
Day 4 of Sean Diddy Combs' sex trafficking and racketeering trial got intense in a hurry as Diddy's ex-girlfriend Cassandra Ventura faced a blistering cross-examination.
Austin was at her that birthday party. Britney Spears was at that birthday party.
All right, we passed that already. Let's keep going.
Cassie had said that there was a time that Diddy didn't want Cassie to do drugs, even though she still was, or even though that Diddy still was. The defense says Diddy didn't want you hanging out with a certain friend. The friend's name was Bonna. Bonna is also a pretty important name into this story. I'd cover.
All right, chat. I'm just gonna do the coverage my damn self, bro. Because finding other people's content is just too much. All right. Cool. So we just got to do the afternoon session yesterday. Then we got to do the full day today. All right. Okay. What is this? Okay. Give me 1 second, y'all. I'm just... Again, if it wasn't for the show and obviously the birthday, like I would have been here with everything. But let me... So it was the 15th, right? Cool. The 15th. Okay, the 15th. Perfect. Here we go. Okay. All right, so we just got to find the part where they break for lunch. So after they break for lunch, we just got to read the rest of those tweets. So we just got to... Let's find when they break for lunch. Yeah, just give me a second, John. Yeah, there's a lot of fucking tweets. Lunch. I'm searching for the. Okay. Da-da-da. Okay. All right. Okay. Yes. So they took a break. All right. Bet. All right. So this is where I missed yesterday, right? So let's start there. So yesterday they come back at like 2:38. They put Cassie back on the stand, and they're like, "Yo, listen, your affair," and they're calling it an affair. It's kind of like interesting because Diddy and Cassie were never married, but they're saying your affair with Kid Cudi, which is Mr. Mescudi, was only about a month long, but you got a burner phone for it. She said, right. So apparently she had a separate phone just to deal with Kid Cudi. Estavo then says, did Mr. Combs kick you in the back? She says, yes. Estavo then says, this came up later in your relationship that you had cheated on him with Kid Cudi, right? Ventura says he brought it up quite a bit. So it looked like Diddy realized that she fucked Kid Cudi and would probably constantly bring it up, just throwing it in her face like, yo, what the fuck? You fuck Kid Cudi, man. Estavo then says, when he cheated, he said, well, you had an affair with Kid Cudi, right? She said sometimes. So it looks like what would happen is that when Diddy was fucking other women and Cassie would find out, Diddy would just constantly use the fact that she fucked Kid Cudi to kind of like call it even with whatever he was doing by saying, yo, how you getting at me for fucking other bitches? Yo, you fuck Kid Cudi, bro. Stop it, right? Probably one of those type of stuff. Estavo was like, yo, he suspected you of having an affair with another person in the industry. You were in South Africa filming, right? She says, yes, I was filming Honey 3. By the way, it's interesting. Cassie seemed like she's kind of jovial. She's laughing and shit like that. Okay. Estavo says, when you were there, did you see a photo of Mr. Combs and Gina and got irate? She says, yes, I was angry. Estavo says, you blocked him and focused on the movie, right? She says, I tried my best. Estavo says, Mr. Combs suspected you of having a relationship with who? She said, Michael B. Jordan. Now, let's look at Honey. Honey 3, it's a movie. I guess this is Cassie, right? Who else is Michael B. Jordan in the movie? He's not in the movie, right? No, he's not. Maybe she was just in the acting world and Diddy thought she was fucking Michael B. Jordan. Whatever. Okay, cool. Estavo then says, you sent a video to not only Mr. Combs, but also staff of who? D-Rock? She says, yes, you sent it to them because you was angry with all of them. She says, I was hurt. I spent all my time with them. Estavo says, you thought they were in on it. Estavo says, yes, the physical abuse. No. Well, Estavo says, the physical abuse, when did your father learn about it? She says, around the same time my mother learned about it. Estavo says, did Mr. Combs come to Connecticut to speak to your parents? Ventura says, I don't know if it was then. Estavo says, Kerry Morgan knew about the abuse? She says, yes. They then ask, the eyebrow gash incident, what was it about? Cassie says, I didn't answer the phone and I went to sleep. I was supposed to be packing for a trip. Estavo says, was he drunk? She says, I don't remember. Estavo says, why were you asleep? Ventura says, a drink at the Abbey had something in it, I think. So she's actually thinking that she got drugged at the Abbey. Estavo says, did Mr. Combs ever abuse you when he was drunk? Then say he didn't remember it. Ventura admits, and she says yes. So she's now asserting that Diddy has used the excuse of, oh shit, I don't remember me doing that to you. Again, this is Diddy's lawyers trying to paint the picture that Diddy was under the influence, and this wasn't some premeditated, like, planned out, like, hey, I'm going to just beat your ass or intimidate you. This was a guy with a temper and going through mood swings because if he was ever withdrawing or coming up or going up or coming down from these drugs. So did Mr. Combs ever abuse you while he was inebriated? Then say he didn't remember. Ventura says yes. Estavo says, did you ever feel like he was not taking responsibility? Ventura says yes. Estavo then says, for drugs, you both went to rehab, right? She says, rehab wasn't really a thing during that relationship. Estavo says, wasn't the freak-offs were an opportunity for y'all to take drugs together, right? She says yes. Gustavo then says, did you went a lot to Burning Man? She says yes. Gustavo then says, did you ever call yourself getting high partners or get high partners? She said we did. So it looked like she used to refer to her and Diddy, or Diddy was my get high partner. That's what Cassie would say. Now, again, this is painting the picture that Diddy was a drug addict and would constantly do drugs and wasn't in the right frame of mind. What does that right frame of mind mean? Or why is that important? Because it shows that he probably didn't have his wherewithal to actually deliberately be participating in a sex trafficking ring, okay? Or leading it, or doing all these things that would constitute as sex trafficking in a racketeering sense, okay? Estava says, did you take drugs from him without him knowing? She says yes. Estava says, what was his reaction? Cassie says, explosive. Estava says, did he tell LA dealers not to deal to you? She says yes. So it looks like Cassie would be trying to steal the drugs from Diddy, and Diddy would basically be telling drug dealers or whoever his supplier was, yo, do not sell no drugs to Cassie. By the way, 2 Tycoon 6, thank you for the gifted membership. Appreciate you, my brother. Combs Estavo says, this is Combs' lawyer, Estavo. She says, you told Karam, which is Christina Karam, that you learned only after the fact that Mr. Combs had dangled Miss Bongalon. Who's Miss Bongalon? Off the balcony. She says, I'm not sure. So now Cassie is doing the I don't recall shit. Estavo says, were you on drugs? She says, I'm not sure. Combs Estavo, which is Diddy's lawyer again, says, you got a life coach for your drug use, according to this document. She says, I don't know who that person is. Estavo then says, weren't you doing a lot of drugs? She says, it was a rough time. Diddy's lawyer then says, you try to get into rehab, the Golden Door, right? She says, it was a spa. There was a time I lost all sense of smell and taste and woke up in the hospital with an IV in my arm. I then tried to get help. Diddy's lawyer says, the time after San Bernardino, you learned he had overdosed. She says, a very strong opiate, yeah. Combs' lawyer says, were you ever not addicted to painkillers? She says, we took ibogaine. What the fuck is that? Let me Google that shit, chat. Ibogaine. It's a psychoactive alkaloid extracted from the bark and roots of the Tabernath iboga plant. It's native to the Central and West Africa. It's been used for centuries in traditional African medicine to treat various ailments, including addiction, anxiety, and depression. Okay. And it could be used as a psychedelic, clearly. All right. They ask, where did you get it? She said, Cancun, Mexico, separately. Estavo then says, when Mr. Combs threw you off the boat in Cannes, when he accused you of taking drugs and squeezed your leg, Ventura says, among other things, Estavo says, but you still wanted to be with him, right? Cassie says, yeah, I still want to be with him. Estavo says, switching topics. When you say Mr. Combs went and got his guns to find Suge Knight, did you remember telling the government that if you went with him? She said, no. Estavo says, let me show you. AUSA says, hey, just for the party. So it looked like they're showing maybe a debriefing session or a interrogation session between Cassie and the government. This is like probably a pre-cooperation thing where they probably got her to put on an affidavit A, B, C, D, and E that later on when she testifies, they know what she gonna say, right? So it looked like her story changed and they noticed it. She claimed when she did the debriefing with the government that she went with Diddy with the guns to go find Suge Knight. Now we're finding out, no, she didn't. Ventura says, I didn't go with them, so I don't think I said that. Combs Estavo says, you did drugs with Miss Morgan, right? She said, yes, Miss Morgan would be Carrie Morgan. That was her best friend. Stavo says, do you recall telling the government that you did not set what he did? Huh? I think you don't. Wait. Did you recall telling the government you did not remember what he did? Hitting her in the head with a wooden hanger? I don't know what that. It's a weird question or a weird statement. All right. He says, I saw the hanger. I saw he was angry that I was doing drugs with Carrie. This broke up your 7-year friendship with her, right? That's what Diddy's lawyer says. She says it did. Estavo says, did you tell Combs about your relationship with your now husband? She said no. So basically, she's admitting that when she was fucking on the trainer, Diddy never knew. Estavo says, Mrs. Morgan sued you and Mr. Combs. Ventura says, yes, she made a demand. Estavo says, and you paid part of that? Cassie said, I did. Estavo says, and you haven't spoken with her since? Ventura says, maybe one text. Estavo says, that was the relationship ender. She said yes. So basically, Diddy gets upset that Cassie's doing drugs. It looked like Diddy always wanted Cassie to do drugs with him. They were drug partners, like they were get high partners, as he called it. And it appears that when Diddy found that she was doing drugs with her best friend, Diddy got mad, threw a wooden hanger, and hit the friend. And the friend stopped being cool with Cassie because she looked at it like Cassie wasn't standing up for her and wasn't standing up to Diddy. So she then later sued or threatened to sue, and I guess there was either a settlement, I would imagine a settlement, and part of the settlement was paid by Cassie, I guess the rest by Diddy. Okay? Estavo says, you'd heat up the baby oil, wouldn't you? Ventura says yes. Estavo says, now, is this the day before the Intercontinental Hotel incident? I guess they must be shown an image or something. AUSA Johnson says, hey, hold up. This is a long document. We need to read it. All right? They took a break. All right? After they took a break, they come back at 4:08. It says, we're in the home stretch of the day. Let's get our jury back. Estavo then says, is this from March 4? AUSA says, with UCT time, it's March 3rd, actually. Estavo says, okay, Mr. Combs refers to accessories. Cassie says, for the premiere. So it looked like they're showing her something of her being at some movie premiere, right? Stavo says, hey, did you send him an explicit message? Cassie says, yes. Stavo says, he responded with a number of M's, right? He wrote, too bad you have to work, LOL. Cassie says, yes. So Cassie's kind of showing that her and Diddy was texting. She had to go to a premiere, but her and Diddy are flirting, talking about still fucking. You get what I'm saying? Now, this is going to be interesting. Hold on. It says this was the day before the incident. Okay. When was the incident? When was the Intercontinental Hotel incident, Cassie? That incident was the 5th. Okay, so before, it looks like they're establishing that Cassie and Diddy were talking freaky. Cool. He wrote, too bad you have to work. He did. He said, you ask him, are you feeling better? Then he's discussing bodily functions. Yes. Cassie says, could we just clarify what time these messages are really from with the UCT? That's Central Time, right? No. What's UCT? Time. I think it's Universal Time. Oh, Universal Time. That's what it is. Okay. And then what is this? Cool. Okay, here we go. Okay. So they're supposed to, they have clarified that it's not UCT, it's UTC. It's Universal, what does it stand for? Coordinated Universal Time? Whatever. So Coordinated Universal Time, or UTC, is 5 hours ahead of Eastern Standard Time, right? And it is 8 hours ahead of Pacific Standard Time. So that's very important. So if you're going on what time it would be in LA, you have to add 8 hours to it, right? So that's why they're saying A bleeds into the next day. That's why they're saying that. Estavo says, Mr. Combs went to your premiere lunch at London Hotel, right? Ventura says he did. Estavo says, then he says, I got out of a spiritual therapy session. Ventura said, I asked, how did it go? He said it's a process. They're kind of reading off text messages here, people. This is leading up to the hotel incident. Estavo says, you say, baby, I want to freak off so bad. Oh, shit. So Cassie is bringing this up. So Estavo says, you say, baby, I want to freak off so bad. You were asked in your direct and said you didn't want him to ruin your premiere. Cassie says, sure. Now, this is where you start to realize they're taking that ice pick to the ice and they're kind of like chipping away at it. Her answers it's always like, yeah, if that's what it says, or sure. It's like she's like copping it a bit rather than being confident like, yes, as I've always said, you know? Estavo says, Mr. Combs says if we start at 7 and go till 4, you could get enough rest after. Holy shit. How many hours is that? That's a 9-hour freak off? Yo, planning a 9-hour fuck session is crazy, bro. Scheduling the fuck session is crazy. Nigga, starting at 7 and wanting to finish at 4 is crazy. Wow. Estavo says, by the way, everybody good? Everybody good? Just gotta make sure y'all good in here, man. Okay. Estavo says he's saying it'll be shorter than the usual freak off, right? Ventura says, that's how I would understand it. Estavo says, what did you say? Ventura, Cassie says, Carrie is here. We can't do it at my house. So it looked like at this point, the freak offs has gotten so much, advanced. They're not only doing it in hotels. Cassie's even down to do it at the crib. Estavo says, you say that guy is sick. I'm not going to ask you what you meant. Oh, look like somebody might be burning, chat. Estavo then says, so you were turning to Johnny. Was he a dancer or an escort? Cassie says we hired him as a dancer. Chat, I think what's happening here, a bunch of these niggas were getting, they were getting a bunch of, they were getting some diseases, bro. You could tell. I think for sensitivity, they're not saying all that shit. Honestly, like, bro, niggas is burning up in this shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, they were freaking off, and it was like, the freak off was like Uno for STDs. Draw 4. You get what I'm saying? All type of shit was going on in the motherfucking freak offs, right? So here we go. It says, okay, so they were going to another guy. It says, was he a dancer or an escort? Cassie says we hired him as a dancer, but he did what an escort does. Estavo says, do you remember at the beginning of this freak off in the Intercontinental Hotel? Cassie says, not really. By the way, this is very interesting. Like, she has shaky memory. All right, whatever. So Estavo says, the drugs were bad. MDMA, right? Cassie says, I have no idea. Estavo says, no, the judge says it's 5 o'clock. Jurors, you may go home. Don't look up anything about the case. Blah, blah, blah. All right, cool. Then I think they're trying to do some procedural shit. So they dismissed for the day yesterday. Says, thank you, Ms. Ventura. No discussion with the government. We'll see you tomorrow. Everybody else be seated. Judge says, how much more? So he's trying to ask Diddy's lawyer, how much more? And she says, let me check. AUSA Johnson says, half an hour on redirect. They're asking for time. And the Filio says, we'll figure it out tomorrow. The judge says, have your next witness ready tomorrow. Who are they? AUSA says, Dawn Richard. The judge says, if there are more issues, someone needs to email the court. Okay? They're adjourned. All right, so cool. Now we're done with yesterday. I think in the afternoon, nothing too crazy other than the whole Kid Cudi thing. That's probably the only thing that came out. And also the fact that when she started cheating on Diddy, Diddy didn't know, right? We didn't really find nothing too crazy out. But we do kind of find out that the Intercontinental Freak-Off was Cassie's idea. Cassie literally says, I want to freak off so bad. Look, You say, baby, I want to freak off so bad. When she was asked about this in her direct, she made it seem I gave him a freak off that he didn't ruin my premiere. I needed, she was describing Diddy as some monster that you had to make happy that he wouldn't ruin your life or he wouldn't ruin any opportunities that you had. But we're seeing it might be the opposite. Look like she wanted to do the freak off and he would try to figure out, okay, let's figure out where you could go to your premiere, get enough sleep for that, and we could still get at least, you know what I mean? They're calling 9-hour freak off. They said that was a short freak off. Jesus Christ. I hope they used to tip the people in the hotels who had to clean up after the freak offs, bro. It got to be mad disgusting. Astroglide, lube, baby oil, butt plugs, fecal matter, pee, like all type of shit, period blood, like all, like semen crust after it's dried up, probably flaking, that flaked off Diddy's nipples. Like, this shit was nasty. Okay. All right, so now we're back to today, right? We're back to today, and we're going over the entire day today, right? So cool. Cassie hasn't taken a stand yet. They're going through some, some more issues, blah, 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 blah. Now they put Cassie on the stand, right? They asked him, do you think he was blacked out during the Intercontinental event? She said, I believe he was intoxicated, right? But everyone's definition is different. So she says, I don't know if he was blacked out, but I know he was like a little bit lit. Slavo says, well, what did you write here? I said, when you get fucked up. So she's basically, they're cross-referencing with some of her text messages where she's admitting that she told Diddy, when you get fucked up, you act crazy, right? And they said, do you mean drugs? She says, and alcohol. Says, here, Mr. Combs, right to you. I'm so horny for you. AUSA says, not in evidence. Then he says, here, Mr. Combs is asking you for sex soon after the Intercontinental incident. Cassie says, I was saying who he felt. Huh? Or was she saying, I was saying what he felt? Anyway. Estava says, what did you write back? She said, I wrote, we need a different vibe than Friday at the Intercontinental Hotel. So look like after the Intercontinental Hotel where he beats her ass, right? Remember, this idea of this hotel footage is that she was trying to escape. She was trying to get out of there. This was like her last this was like Toby running away from the plantation. You get what I'm saying? If you're trying to run away from the freak off there, you're not coming back to do it again, right? It looks like they get cool and then they basically say, it looks like it's within the same week because they mentioned the day, right? You wouldn't mention the day if it's not in the same week. Ventura, Cassie says, we need a different vibe than what happened Friday at Intercontinental. What does that say, Chad? It says that even though this quote-unquote brutal beatdown, a couple days later, she was ready to do the freak off again. She just wanted a different vibe. Shit. Oh, shit. Yo. It's good.
Yo.
Nigga, I'm on stream.
What's up, bro? Yo. You on stream?
Yeah, you want me to hit you after?
Yeah. Hit me after.
Or you want me to text
bro,
you?
If I don't get to call you, happy birthday, you heard?
Nah, I appreciate you, my G. Appreciate you, man. How you?
And is your show, was your show yesterday?
Yeah, the shit was lit, nigga.
Damn, bro, my bad fucking, I got the probation shit.
I know.
Yo, if anything, call me after the stream.
Yeah, I'm gonna call you after the stream. All right, cool. Shout out to my man 6ix9ine. W to 6ix9ine. Shout out to my man. Okay, somebody said happy birthday. You heard? That's such a New York thing. You heard? All right, come on. Let's lock in, chat. All right, so look like within the same week, Diddy's asking her for sex. By the way, let me also put this into perspective for everybody who's kind of watching. And I want to hear you guys' opinion. I'm going to look in the chat, see what you guys think about this. Here, think about this, chat. It appears that, and tell me if you think it helps or hurts Diddy. It feels like most of their communications were done in email and text. So you would see Diddy ask for sex, like, yo, let's fuck, right? Rather than get on the phone and there might not be a record of it. So they have all these text messages, and these text messages kind of show step by step what their conversation's like. I think it helps Diddy. The more text messages that exist shows that, hey, all right, after the fight, they're still communicating, they're still talking freaky. If you don't have these messages, like say they are still talking freaky, but it's only phone calls, it's he said, she said. She gonna be like, yeah, I don't remember talking freaky with him after that. But you have it here in text messages. We got it in 4K. So I do believe that these messages are helping Diddy, because I don't think she would testify, oh yeah, no, we were just playing, like, yeah, I kind of forgave him mad quickly for that, and then we were playing another freak off. We were just like, yeah, let's get a different vibe. So I think these messages are helping Diddy. It shows freak off happens, the fighting happens. Couple days later, within the same week, they're trying to, let's go figure this out. Let's go do this again, but get a different vibe. All right, cool. So Ventura says that she wanted a different vibe than Friday at the Intercontinental. Combs says, fuck Friday. I don't even want to do that again. And then they say, what did you write? Cassie says, LOL, true. I'm wondering if are they trying some crazy shit like, yo, Cassie, while the nigga in your pussy, let me put my dick in your ass. Like, they must be doing some other shit, bro. I don't know what's going on right here. He says, I don't even want to do that again. Are they talking about just the violence? The fighting? They're also, this idea that maybe she went through his phone or blah, 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 blah. They're not also addressing the issue, right? It looks like they just got over it. Like, they just chalked it up to, that's some drunk shit. Yeah, that's some drunk shit, right? It said, fuck Friday. I don't even want to do that again. So what'd you write? Say, I wrote, LOL, true. Estavo says, Mr. Combs suspected you of having an affair with someone else in the industry. What happened when he took your phone? Ventura says, we were in the car and he told me to call my mother. When I did, he grabbed my phone and took it. It was a big fight. He was just gone. For how long? It says, for a few hours until my mother called the police. Estavo says, did Mr. Combs go through your phone? She says, I think so. And he called someone on it. Estavo says, the person you had an affair with was an NFL player, right? She says, I don't know if he's playing anymore. And Estavo says, but it was an NFL player though, right? And he was jealous. Estavo says, wasn't there a time he found out you were dancing with another person in the music industry and he took your phone? She says, I don't remember. Estavo says, come on, you don't know what's Chris Brown. Stop playing. She says, nah, I wasn't dancing with him. Estavo says, all right, check this out. Look at this. It's from 2013. She says, ooh, okay, you got me. You got me. Now I see it. Oh, yeah, you're right. So, again, maybe her memory is failing her, or maybe this goes into the idea that she was completely in a drugged out state and her memory is really inconsistent. Regardless, I still think this helps Diddy, because the more you prove that she is inconsistent with her recollection of what happened, you could then keep further hammering home the point that these fine details of quote-unquote abuse or this control that would come from these very small but nuanced things that played a part into this control sex trafficking narrative that Diddy has, she might not remember that either, or she might be remembering it incorrectly. Okay? She says, what else did Mr. Combs take? He says, he took my car, my passport when he was angry. Estavo says, let's refresh you about Mr. Combs being in rehab. She says, I vaguely remember. That's interesting. Cassie can't remember shit now. She vaguely remember. Combs says, Estavo says, why did you go to Sedona? Ventura says, I went to Arizona to get away from the drugs. Estavo says, I'm going to go to a new topic. Mr. Combs told you to get the video you heard about. What did you write? I wrote, you keep putting me down. Estavo says, I'm going to play you some audio. Ventura says, this is the audio saying, yo, if you saw a video of someone fucking me, who was fucking me? You have it? Why didn't you show me? Because I'm not disrespectful, bro. And Cassie says, Cassie then says, if you don't show me, I will kill you, cut you up. Oh, shit. The audio is still being played. Ventura says, I will fucking kill you. I've never killed no one ever in my life. I'm going to fuck you up, and it's not going to be blood on my hands. Somebody else is going to kill you. I'm not playing with you, Sujit. Tell me. Combs, Estavo, so Combs' lawyer says, that's you, right? She says, yeah. Estavo says, did Mr. Combs express concern about these videos being released? So apparently some people got some videos of her. And she was calling around and trying to figure out how they got the video and basically threatening these people. He said, does Mr. Combs express concern about these videos being released? Ventura says, when? Estavo says, ever. Cassie says, yes. Estavo says, the escort Jonathan, you thought he took a video? Remember, part of the settlement, the $5 million the dude claimed he got. He said he got the video to sign an NDA that he can't talk about him contracting herpes from them, allegedly. Can't sue them civilly for contracting this disease. And also he had to turn over videotapes. He had to turn it over. And remember, he even claimed they accidentally returned him the videotapes. So Ventura says, yes. It says, Mr. Combs spent a lot of money to make sure that video didn't get released, right? She says, I don't know. Estavo says, you had a conversation with Jonathan Odie that was transcribed. Ventura says, I'm not sure. Estavo says, he was volatile, right? She said, yeah, I didn't trust him. Estavo says, what did Mr. Combs say when you told him you thought Odie was recorded? Ventura says, he said he'll take care of it. Estavo says, are you aware of an escort leaving comments on Mr. Combs' Instagram page? Ventura says, I am not. Okay? Estavo says, now let's talk about rehab. Do you still do Suboxone? What is that? What is that? Oh, it's a medication to treat the dependence on opioids. Okay, so it's something to help cure addiction for opioids. Cool. So she said something like that. Estavo says, what does it treat? She says opioid addiction. AUSA says objection. They say overruled. Estavo says you wrote a book in rehab. The place treats sexual compulsion. Oh, shit. So it looks like Cassie went to rehab, but it wasn't only for opioids. She went to rehab for freakiness. She was getting sexual compulsion treated. AUSA says objection. They do a sidebar. They come back. Estavo says, did you get neurofeedback therapy? Neurofeedback therapy? What's that? Neurofeedback therapy is a form of biofeedback that utilizes electroencephalography. It's electroencephalography. Okay, I'm still pronouncing a little bit horrible. Anyway, EEG to measure the brainwave activity and provide real-time feedback on individuals, helping them learn to consciously regulate their brainwaves. This therapy can be used to treat conditions include ADHD, anxiety, depression, and PTSD, as well as insomnia, learning disabilities, and addiction. Wow. So it looked like she was getting some brain type of therapy, maybe to treat her nymphomaniac desires. Like, looked like she was a freak. Like, she couldn't control it. Like, she just loved to fuck. She said, yes. They said, what is it? They said, well, they hook something up to your head and they show you things and they see how you react. Were you told the effects of it? She says, to help with my trauma. Estavo says, did you participate in EMDR? She says, yes. What does he do? Memories and processing them. The idea, and this is Estavo saying, the idea is you recall prior traumatic memories like PTSD. Were you treated for PTSD? She said, yes. Ventura says, I was still physically developing. Estavo says, you were 22. Cassie says, women keep developing after 22. You don't think? Oh, by the way, this is why it is key to have a woman lawyer. This conversation could only happen between two women. If it was a man having a conversation with Cassie here, where Cassie says, if it was a man having a conversation with Cassie, where Cassie says, women we develop past 22, you're not going to believe the male attorney, right? You're just going to be like, yo, bro, how are you going to tell a woman about a woman, right? But if it's two women, it plays well. They just have a disagreement about it, right? Estavo says, you're not suggesting you were still physically developing after 22. She says, I'm not. Estavo says, the message is about having a freak off with ketamine, right? AUSA Johnson says, hey, could I confer with counsel? Ooh, so the message is about having a freak off without ketamine. Oh, so look like Diddy wanted her to stop doing ketamine, right? The judge says no, but we'll take a break. The jury leaves. More is coming. With the jury out, the judge says, I need a witness list by Sunday, 5 p.m., but this will and other filings are clearly whatever. Now here they go on a real break. They're back. Estavo says, Mr. Combs wrote, you're so predictable. You said you were going to tell him you didn't want to do freak offs anymore, but you didn't say it, did you? She said, I did not. Estavo says, here you're suggesting freaking off with a girl. Estavo says, you said you found a photo of Combs with Gina while you were staying with your parents in Connecticut, right? She says, yes. So now Gina Hill comes in. Estavo says you decided to break up with him, and he didn't threaten you, but he suggested couples counseling. She says, I don't know. Pretty much says, I don't remember. Estavo says, so by the way, this is another development. Looked like Cassie was starting to suggest, hey, let's bring another girl in this. Now, keep in mind, we don't know if bringing the other girl would be for Diddy, because it appears that Diddy were cool with only men, right? Like Diddy wanted men. But she looked like, and by the way, what this helps establish is that she was a freaky frog. She wanted to keep remixing. You know how they said Diddy invented a remix? Well, she wanted to remix the freak off. Okay, all right, there's too many dicks, too many niggas. Let's bring a girl up in here. Let's remix the freak off real quick. You feel what I'm saying? And I guess she finds and by the way, here's the thing. Oh, it could be because of this reason too. She's now finding out Diddy has other bitches. And when she finds out Diddy has other bitches, to try to compete, she's telling Diddy, yo, why don't we just bring some of these girls in? Again, sometimes a woman will want to keep her spot as number one by, as long as she feels like she's a leader, bring another girl in. So maybe that's what was her thought. We don't know. All right, so she finds a picture of Diddy with Gina, breaks up with him, and they make it a point to say, Diddy never threatened you after you broke up, right? He just suggested couples counseling. She says, I don't know. Estavo then says, in August 2018, you called it closure conversation. Mr. Combs was inviting you to Burning Man, right? Ventura says, yes. Estavo says, I'll read Mr. Combs. I'll read for Mr. Combs. Mr. Combs says, you have anger. Ventura says, I wrote, my family knows I'm not running around telling our business. Ventura then says, I wrote, I don't need you to be taking care of Kim and Gina. I needed you to put me first. So it looks like her jealousy was starting to rise. She was looking at Diddy to say, you're taking care of two other women, and I don't feel like you're putting me first. It's kind of like this idea that they have a swinger lifestyle, which that's Diddy's defense. It seems like it's kind of ringing true, because Cassie's almost, again, swinger lifestyle doesn't mean necessarily cheating, but it looks like they're kind of showing that Cassie knew that Diddy had other women. And Cassie was just trying to fight and do more things to try to be number one, right? You hear what she says. I don't need you to be taking care of both Kim Porter and Gina. I just need you to put me first. Estavo says, well, please read these. Ventura says, I wrote, you lied to me. She never went away. It was a nail in the coffin. Estavo says, you mean Gina, the photo? She says, yes. So basically she's saying that I guess Diddy was just like, yo, I don't fuck with her no more. And that's not true. Okay, let's keep it going, Chad. Stavo then says, in your civil lawsuit, you said Mr. Combs raped you in September 2018, right? After you had dinner at an Italian restaurant in Malibu, right? She said, yes. Stavo says, did you meet with the U.S. on November 30th? So did you meet with the feds November 30th, 2023? She says, yes, not the exact date, but yeah, I did meet with the government. Estavo says, in this meeting, you said the rape took place after Mr. Combs returned from Burning Man. You said he was acting strangely at the dinner. Ventura says, I don't remember exactly that word. Estavo says, did you meet the U.S. on April 8th, 2025? She says, around then. So I guess this was their meeting pre-trial. It says, the message to FB. Who's that? Ventura says Frank Black, a name he used. Remember, Diddy's fake name was Frank Black. Her name was Jackie Starr. Estavo says he wrote, I'm in an investor conference. We'll get back to this. Do you still have love for him? Ventura says, I have love for the past and what it was. So she hasn't ruled out that she still has love for Diddy. Despite her testifying, which, by the way, goes into my theory here, Chad. I done told y'all, Cassie definitely wanted the money. But Cassie, I don't think Cassie want to send this nigga to jail. I think the husband want to send this nigga to jail. I keep telling y'all, that nigga want to see Diddy dead or in jail for life. That's the only way you could get past some of this trauma that, as a man, hearing these things about your girl, you want that nigga to be dead. You know what I mean? You could kind of get over it a little bit better if you like, oh yeah, that nigga who did it dead. You know what I mean? It's another sidebar. Estavo comes back and says, yo, you wrote, I didn't mean to be a bitch. I just don't get the time. He writes, just needed you to be positive, correct? She said, yes. Estavo says, DX 1309. He says, is this about a yoga instructor? She said, yup. Estavo said, what'd you write? Ventura says, I've stopped even caring. Estavo says, but you did care. She said, yeah. Estavo says, so he said, you could date other people. Let's just talk about it, correct? Ventura says, yes. So it looks like they're showing that Diddy was down to let her go. Diddy was telling her, you could date other people. It's okay. Remember, they went to this Burning Man to have a closure. It's almost like a closure trip. But they continued to have this closing, closure type of energy in messages. And Diddy was just saying, I guess Cassie's saying, yo, I've stopped caring. Like I'm done with this. I stopped caring. But then they're asking her, they said, did you stop caring? She's now saying, nah, I still cared. Right? I still cared. They said, so when Diddy said you could date other people, he said that, right? She said, correct. They said, what did you write? He said, Cassie then wrote, I do love you. I would just prefer not being one of your bitches or your girlfriends. Let's get up tomorrow night. I'll do studio from 6 to 9. So basically, when Diddy basically says to Cassie, because I guess Cassie is saying, you have multiple girlfriends. I don't want to be one of the multiple girlfriends. Diddy says to her, well, you could have multiple boyfriends or you could have other guys. You could date other people. And Diddy says the only thing he said, let's just talk about it. So Diddy looked like he was down for her to do stuff with other people. She was saying, and I guess she was like playing chicken because she was acting. Remember, she was like, yeah, I've stopped caring. But she cared, right? So now she's like, I love you. But I would just prefer not being one of your girlfriends, okay? Estavo then says, he writes, can I hold you or are you going to just break up with me? Estavo says, and you write back, we can embrace. And then they ask Cassie, you wanted to hug him, right? Cassie says, that's what I said. Estavo says, did you have sexual intercourse with Mr. Combs that night? She said, I did. Estavo says, and during that, your now husband FaceTimed you. So while Diddy is putting, you know what I mean, he's dicking her down type shit, her current husband FaceTimes her during the fuck session, okay? Estavo says, your now husband didn't know you were with Mr. Combs at the time. Cassie says, I don't know what he knew. So basically, it looked like what happened, and what they're also establishing is that Cassie is a habitual liar, a drug addict, and a nympho. All of these things have been painting really well today and yesterday. They're saying, you got to remember, her now husband is Alex Fine. He is the guy who was a trainer that Diddy hired. So he knew at some point Diddy was with her, but clearly they're trying to establish your new boyfriend thought you broke up with Diddy, right? That's what they're trying to say. You're saying your now husband didn't know you were with Diddy at the time, right? And said, oh, I don't know what he knew. And said, well, later he discovered it, right? Now the AUSA realized, like, this seems more gossipy to kind of like hurt the feelings of the husband and kind of cause like where are you going with this? Objection. The judge actually overrules it. Estavo says, you don't, or you didn't tell your husband you were raped? Okay, so I guess they're saying you spoke with your husband or the guy you eventually married later and said, why didn't you tell me you were raped? She said, not that evening. Estavo says after Miss Porter's memorial service, you wrote to him that you were going home. Why had he called Kim his soulmate? What was the 11 years all about? So, by the way, this is 2018 now. This is around the time of the rape. So, apparently, she was done with all of this, right? And let's Google it. So, when did Kim Porter die? Yeah, Kim Porter died in 2018. Looked like Cassie was severely hurt because she thought she was the number one for Diddy. She thought Diddy loved her. Diddy was probably selling her a dream. She kept asking Diddy for kids. Kim Porter had kids with Diddy. Diddy probably was going along, buttering her up. She's thinking she's number one. She's like the attractive trophy wife that Diddy's bringing to red carpets. She feels like that's why she keeps doing more and more freak offs, whatever, to kind of edge out these other girls. The Gina girl comes in. She starts trying to remix the freak off. Yo, you want to do a freak off with a girl? Like, Cassie's doing a lot to become the main girl. She thinks she's the main girl. Kim Porter dies, and when Diddy writes like this long Instagram post after her memorial service, Diddy calls her his soulmate, and Cassie is floored because now it's like, yo, the 11 years meant nothing? What? So now Cassie leaves. Supposedly that's when they break up. She breaks up with him. Diddy comes over, and supposedly that's when the rape happened. Okay, cool. So what was it 11 years about? Yeah, Cassie said yes. Estavo says, was that hurtful? She says, at that time, yes. Estavo says, after the memorial service, you never saw Combs again. She said, I did not. He let you go, right? I never saw him again. I don't know about letting me go. So I guess the rape happened before the memorial service, right? And the caption must have happened before then, too. Estavo says, you got married to the love of your life, right? And the judge said, let's break. They're back and said, let's get these couple things done before the jury returns. Estavo says, we think it's appropriate for this message to come in. AUSA Johnson says, we have issues with phrases like, I'd like to reconnect. AUSA Johnson says, what state of mind is this offered for? The judge says there are portions that are properly admissible, so this needs to be redacted if it's going to be admitted into evidence. For example, the 5th paragraph, I've been getting my life together, blah, blah, blah. Estavo says, all right, we could get that through other exhibits. The judge says you can redact it right now. Estavo says, we'll do it right now. Tenny Garagos, Combs, Tenny Garagos on exhibits and redactions, says, I want to say that we're finishing the cross faster than he thought. Probably before the next break. Agnifilo says, could I speak with the government for 1 minute? The judge says, bring the jury back. Okay, the jury enters. Estavo says to Cassie, Ms. Ventura, we're almost done here. Cassie says, whew, all right, thank you. Estavo says, I will read Mr. Combs' messages. You're going to make a beautiful mother. God bless. Cassie said, then I said, thank you. God bless. Cassie then says, I wrote, we should talk and have closure. Estavo says, Combs then sent a tear face emoji. He said, you were always my ride or die. Ventura says, I thought it was nice. Estavo says, you'd been craving that, right? Cassie says, before. I don't think I was craving it now. So she's saying that Diddy calls her a ride or die. And it says, you were always my ride or die. And that made her feel good, right? That made her feel good. Estavo then says, you shaped you over 11 years, right? You shaped each other. Cassie says, yes. Estavo says, your husband's a physical trainer? Cassie says, yes. Estavo says, the house you grew up in Connecticut, was it relatively modest compared to mansions? She says, yes. Estavo says, you were preparing to tour with a Matt Testa. Ventura says, yes, he's an engineer. Estavo says, once you settled your lawsuit, you canceled the tour, right? Cassie says, yes. So basically they're saying how her lifestyle changed after November when she got the $30 million from, or $20 million from Diddy. Estavo says, because you no longer needed the money, right? Cassie said that's not the reason why she canceled the tour. Estavo says after the hotel video came out, you posted an Instagram video saying that domestic violence is the issue, right? Cassie says, yes, I still feel that way. So, ooh, remember that? Remember that? So they're saying even Cassie was chalking this up to just domestic violence, not sex trafficking. This is it right here. Thank you for all the love and support. Domestic violence is the issue. It broke me down to someone I never thought I would become. With a lot of hard work, I'm better today, but I'll be always recovering from my past. Thank you for everyone that's taken the time to take this matter seriously. My only ask is that everyone open your heart to believe in victims the first time. It takes a lot of heart to tell people the truth out of a situation that you are powerless in. I offer my hand to those that are living in fear. Reach out to people. Don't cut them off. No one should carry this weight alone. This healing journey is never ending, but the support means everything to me. Thank you. Okay. All right. Estavo says, Mr. Combs wrote, want to freak off one last time. What did you write? Cassie says, I didn't want it to be the last time. I wanted to freak off for the first time. So it looked like Diddy, when it's wrapping up between them, Diddy's like, yo, you want to do one more freak off for the, you know what I mean? For the one time? Cassie was just like, yeah, I want it to be the last time, though. So Cassie looked like she wanted to continue the freak offs. Estavo says, no further questions. Judge does a redirect, right? So now the AUSA gets back up and says, Miss Ventura, you were shown this message where you ended, right? I don't want to freak off for the last time. I want it to be the first time for the rest of our lives. What did you say after that? Ventura says, yes, I'm horny. Just got over a UTI. AUSA Johnson says, you were shown messages today in which you and Sean were kind and loving. Ventura says, yes. AUSA says, did those period ever last? Combs Estavo objected. Judge overruled. Cassie said, no, they didn't last. They'd be a downswing. AUSA Johnson says, in what world did Sean open up to you? A world of chaos. In your 11-year relationship, who did you want to have sex with? They keep saying this. Ventura says only him at that time. AUSA says when Sean wrote, seduce me all day, what did you do? Write about freak-offs. AUSA says, were you able to cancel work obligations for freak-offs? Yes, if I was told to. AUSA says, when you were shooting the movie in South Africa and you blocked him, how did he contact you? Through Mia. By the way, I think this is they're putting a bridge through this idea for Rico and organization, and Mia's Diddy's former personal assistant. So now I could imagine Mia's going to come up soon. By the way, I'm going to read you guys' donations in a bit. AUSA Johnson says, he said he didn't remember hurting you. Did you believe him? Ventura says, not always, because I knew him. There were times he was pretty aware of what he was doing. It's just who he was. I'd seen him be violent with other people. AUSA Johnson says, on the way back from Cannes, what did Sean do? He played me a video. By the way, they asked this already. The AUSA is like doubling up on a lot of stuff. But I guess they want this to be the last point the jury hears. Played a video of me having sex with an escort. AUSA says, what did he say he'd do? Ventura said he'll release it. After AUSA says that when you got to New York, what did Sean ask for? A freak off or he'll release it. AUSA Johnson says, when Sean wrote you ready for tonight, what did he mean? A freak off. AUSA says, what were you afraid he would do if he didn't get that freak off? Estavo says objection. Objection overruled. Ventura says, I don't know that week. Judge says, next question. Johnson says, do you have any doubt that Sean raped you? Estavo says objection. They overrule that. Cassie says, I have no doubt. AUSA says, after Sean raped you on the 18th, did you later have consensual sex with Sean during which your now husband FaceTimed you? She says yes. AUSA Johnson say, why did you cancel the tour? Ventura says, because after I filed my civil suit, it was overwhelming. Addressing the past the way I chose to was overwhelming. I did not want to go. Did you plan to file more lawsuits? She said no. AUSA Johnson said, would you give back the $20 million if you hadn't had to do freak-offs? Estavo says objection. Judge says overrule. Ventura says I would give it back to get my agency back. I guess it means my innocence back, right? AUSA says, did he beat you during the freak-offs? She says yes. She starts to cry. Ooh, okay. This is about to be a drop mic moment. You can tell. AUSA Johnson says, were you open to freak-offs at the beginning? She said at the beginning. AUSA says, did you tell him when you no longer wanted to do them? Yes, more than once. AUSA says, what concerns did you have about saying no to freak-offs? She said safety, career, love. AUSA Johnson says no further question. Judge says, Ms. Estavo, this is going to be a recross. Estavo says, wait, hold on. You knew Mr. Combs' sexual preference was these freak-offs, right? She said, well, I learned. Estavo said it was part of being his girlfriend, right? Cassie says, yeah. Estavo says, you kept your old device, right? She says, yeah. Hold on. Hold on. Ooh, shit. Okay. Okay, cool. And freak-off videos in this case. So they're saying that Cassie kept videos of freak-offs and said they were all on those devices you kept from 2012 and 2014. She said, I don't know what year. Stavo says you were able to stand at his side at the Met Gala, being his girlfriend. It gave you access to producers, right? She says yes. Beyond Kid Cudi, what other musicians were you put in a studio with? Were you put in a studio with Nicki Minaj? Yes. Okay. Uh-huh. Oh. There was a fake post saying Nicki's name got brought up. It's not true. It was this was the first time Nicki's name was ever brought up. Okay, cool. It says, Estavo says, were you put in the studio with Lil Wayne? Cassie says, yes. Were you put in the studio with Rick Ross, Pusha T? She says, yes. She says, am I forgetting any names? She says, well, you've got a lot of names. Estavo says, you're self-conscious about your musical talent. She says, I wouldn't say that. Estavo says, you've had a bad performance on 106 Park, right?
So the Diddy and Cassie situation has been getting freakier and freakier by the day. The more and more I hear about these allegations, Diddy is a freaky man, the king of the freak-offs. And Cassie, you feel me? She was young, vulnerable. But like what Axe said, she could have left. Like Diddy was not holding her. Well, this is what's hard for me. Allegedly, Diddy wasn't holding her hostage, but she said on the video that came out in the hotel where he hit her over and drug her back, she was trying to leave one of the freak offs. And Diddy said, "Oh no, you're not gonna leave the freak offs. You gotta, yeah, wait till the dude, bust a nut, allegedly, then all over you, then scrape it off, go in the other room and rub it on my nipples." That's what he wanted. It sounds so crazy to say, but that's what Diddy wanted. Like, we seen him in the robe. I thought he was just fresh out the shower, but allegedly he was probably butt naked. I'm surprised there was no baby oil on her or him, or she wiped it off. That's why he was so mad. It was no baby oil on. Hey man, I genuinely feel bad for Cassie. I feel bad for her husband too, because he has to be in court and he's listening to all these things. And I don't really think Cassie's lying about anything. Like, Cassie just seems like a nice girl, probably like gentle, innocent, like, and she just wanted a career. Like, man, I'm struggling here because I want to be very, very honest about everything, like my point of view. I don't think Diddy was the best of best people, and I think everything he did to Cassie was wrong, and it was definitely manipulative and all that stuff. But like, is it sex trafficking though? Like, this is what he's charged for. Like, domestic violence, yes. Assault, yes. Like, probably a bunch of other crazy stuff, yes. But sex trafficking, bro, I don't know if you could say he was sex trafficking. But it's only day 2 of the trial. And I'm gonna be very, very unbiased about every single thing I say. It's day 2 of the trial. Diddy is he's there every day. They say that he's looking white as hell, he's gray as hell. He's, you feel me? They said he was looking at Cassie the whole time. But day 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we don't know what's gonna happen. Maybe 2 weeks later, there might be someone else taking the stand, and we don't know how that's gonna go. Maybe like 3 days later, there's gonna be a new person taking the stand, and they just expose everything about Diddy. Like, we don't know fully everything Diddy's done yet. Like, there might have been men that he was having free calls with. Like, ain't gonna lie, bro. Like, Act was the line about what he said. Diddy should just came out and said that he was a flexible, bro. He should just said he was bisexual, bro. Like, I'm not gonna lie. And what Act said, bro, all these rappers gotta come out who was around Diddy, like really, really hung around Diddy and was like really cool with him. They need to come out and like, yeah, yeah, bro. You gotta defend yourself, your integrity. You feel me? But your boy Big Act News. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. And do you feel like Diddy's innocent, or do you feel like he's guilty? And we're talking about sex trafficking. Like, we're not talking about is he a good person or not. Do you think he's guilty of sex trafficking, Cassie? It's your boy Big Act News, and I'm out.